NASCAR goes to Netflix. So, how did this whole experiment turn out? Come on inside. Welcome into the Scrutineering room. I'm David Lawrence, and today let's talk NASCAR Full Speed. NASCAR's newest attempt to get into the mainstream media. It's a 5 episode docu-series based on the 2023 NASCAR playoffs. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is one of the executive producers on the show with some of NASCAR brass, which includes Ben Kennedy. And let's take a look. Let's do a little bit more of a deep dive into the docu-series. I had a chance to watch. The series came out on January 30th. On January 30th, had a chance to watch it. So before you proceed, if you have Netflix and want to watch the series, I do recommend you to pause the show right now, come back, and then see the rest of this episode. But if you are okay with the spoilers, stay tuned because here we go. So to break down the show, NASCAR Full Speed, 5 episodes. Episode 1 basically covers the regular season finale at Daytona. Episode 2 takes you through the round of 16, which was Darlington the Southern 500, Kansas, and Bristol Night Race. Episode 3 took you through the round of 12, which was Texas, Talladega, and the Charlotte Roval. Episode 4 took you through the round of 8, which was Las Vegas, Miami, and Martinsville. And then episode 5, the championship race at Phoenix. So I'm going to be a little bit more jumbled up here, but here's basically some of the things that you'll see. Some things I like, some things that I didn't like. So I'm going to go and run through them all real quick right here. First off, I love let's just throw the curtains down. Let's show these guys at home. Let's show these guys their personal life. Gotta love the show opening with Denny Hamlin burning a pancake. Boy, God bless him. Clearly he drives cars better than he can make breakfast. Do not pursue Waffle House, Denny. Just being serious. Just keeping it light. But no, him getting his daughters, Molly and Taylor, ready for school. So much. And then William Byron finding out he's huge for sweets, Fruit Loops, Oreos, you name it. So that was kind of pretty cool to see. As you go through the episodes, you notice that not all of the main protagonists are introduced together. They actually introduce the drivers in segments. For example, in episode 1, Denny Hamlin's the focal point because they introduce him. William Byron's introduced also in this show. In episode 1, you also get a small intro to Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace because we also look at Denny, the team owner, in this. And I'll actually get back to one of these in my top 5 from the show. So we have Denny, he's kind of the big focal point because of where he is and how big of a place he has in the regular season finale. I love that. I feel that this show will satisfy both diehard NASCAR fans who are absolutely literate about the sport because it gives them that behind the scenes access, but at the same time they do a excellent job in kind of getting a novice casual fan up to speed. Huge amounts that goes to Steve Letarte, Dale Jr., Shannon Spake of Fox, and Marty Smith of ESPN. While he does a lot of college football now, still the avid NASCAR journalist. So definitely got to give Dale Jr. and the executive producer team props on making sure that they actually kept the show very big for both novices and also the diehard dedicated NASCAR fan. Dale Jr., I gotta give him his flowers on this. He and those guys did one hell of a job. The access they gave us, granted, Dirty Mo produces actions detrimental, but a lot of access to a lot of drivers and just so much insight and info was given throughout the 5 episodes. So I got to give Dale Jr., Ben Kennedy and company a huge props on how they were able to do that. By the way, I want to give a shout out. In episodes 2 and 3 in particular, with Bubba alongside shadowing him was his right hand girl, Sydney Frison. Sydney, if you come across this and I butcher your name, please forgive me. But Sydney is is Bubba's personal PR rep at 2311, and you get to see her a good amount and just a little bit of insight into how she does her job. Seeing her at playoff media day, seeing her at the track week to week, you see her right there with Bubba, and I actually like that they included her into it, because it kind of gives you an idea, because it's not just Sydney, it's a lot of these men and women who serve as the PR reps, the media reps, to make sure these drivers get to where they need to be, to make their appearances, to put faces for their sponsors, for the company. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Sydney and everyone in PR marketing, driver reps, because the show did also showcase them in a pretty good light. Now, one thing that kind of did irk me a little bit in the first 3 episodes was, while they did give Bubba his share of attention, it kind of irked me just a little bit that Bubba's wife Amanda didn't get as much love as Aaron Blaney or Gianna Tullio, who is Ryan Blaney's fiance, Aaron Blaney, Ryan's sister, who also dates William Byron. They got a lot of camera time. I'm not surprised the wives did, but here you have Amanda Wallace, Bubba's wife. She didn't get a lot of the time, and granted, don't know if Amanda said, don't put too much of it on me. You do see Amanda in the scenes where she's on the pit box, but outside of that, she's not really much of a focal point in the show. Again, that's hindsight 2020. Maybe Amanda said, I don't want to be involved too much with the project, so that could be that. But I was a little bit skewed by that, considering how a lot of the other girlfriends, fiancés, and wives were brought into it and showcased. And not a lot of Bubba at home. Again, that could have been something Bubba requested not to do. So again, I take that with a grain of salt with 2020 hindsight. I gotta talk about the 2 unintended stars of Full Speed, and that is crew chiefs Chris Gabehart, who is Denny Hamlin's crew chief at Joe Gibbs, and Booty Barker, who is Bubba's crew chief at 2311. These guys absolutely really added life to episodes 2 and 3 in particular. Gabehart actually was in there through episode 4, but Gabehart, you see why he is kind of seen as a professor of sorts in the NASCAR garage. Very insightful, very informative. On the box, got to follow him at pit practice. He had a lot of availability when they brought him in his office. So Chris really became a star for me. Another way, especially through episode 1, the regular season finale, how he explains post-race inspection, how he explains like just the tech of the cars, and that's some really big insight, some really big knowledge. If you're familiar with SiriusXM, you know Chris has always been very open. He was a regular on Claire B. Lang's show during the 23 season. So Chris has always been one of those guys available at the time, so not too surprised. However, Booty Barker was the real surprise in this show for me. He's been a crew chief in the sport for a long time. He's been at all 3 levels of the sport for the better part of 20 years. And my goodness, did he hit it out the park. Because not only is he giving you insight, but he is giving you his unfiltered, unadulterated, 100% Booty Barker self. I loved it. and basically episode 3, of course, is when Bubba is knocked out of the round of 12. Um, and we get and the piece that really did it for me with Booty was the Texas episode. Team had a great chance to get their win, put themselves in the round of 8, really shake the playoff grid. Unfortunately, things didn't work out on the final restart. William Byron came through. I'll touch on that shortly, but Booty and the team clearly distraught, clearly frustrated after what could have been a victorious day after one hell of a weekend. And Booty basically was just like, okay, are we done? Take this mic off me. Get me out of here. I'm done. And basically, and now what's became probably one of the bigger memes of this show is Booty coming on and said, I think I lied to you on the grid. Which is, like I said, it's in the short time the show's been out, it's probably become the biggest meme if you've been following the show on social media, about how Booty has just become, how this is Booty's signature. He's unfiltered. He'll tell you like it is. If he's frustrated, he's mad, he's not going to want to stay in front of the cameras. He's not going to want to talk to you no longer than he has to. So he really did become a star. And oh, by the way, shout out to that awesome bourbon room at his house that we saw at the end of episode 3. I thought I knew some friends who knew how to drink some bourbon, but my goodness, that man has a bourbon collection, may I tell you. By the way, I have a friend in Maryland who might be interested in that, Booty, so I might give you some info. Hit me up if you ever see this. But no, that's kind of the gist of the series. They do a race by race. Another voice that, and before I go into my top 5, huge shout out to Mike Bagley of SiriusXM, The Morning Drive, and MRN. You hear his voice a lot. While he's not on the camera very much, you do get a great amount of his voiceovers throughout the Netflix series, and definitely got to give Mike his flowers. If you don't have SiriusXM, definitely make sure you do. Tune him into The Morning Drive and give him and his MRN mates a listen at the track whenever they are during a race this season. All right, now let's get to my top 5 moments from NASCAR Full Speed. I'll begin at number 5, and I touched on it earlier. The Texas race was Hendrick's 300th win. I love the countdown to 300. Where Jeff, of course, Hendrick is Jeff Gorenchak announced they're interviewed a little bit throughout the series. William was a very big focal point in the show from day one, and for good reason. He was the winningest driver on the season. And I think it was pretty big that you had the Hendrick scope put in. I'm a little bit surprised they kind of put Larson's 299th win in there before they introduced Larson to the audience. I kind of need to back up, if I can, for a moment. I don't know if I mentioned this, but they kind of staggered the intros throughout. In episode 1, they introduced Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, William Byron to us. Episode 2, spotlight was on Joey Logano. Then in episode 3, spotlight's on Ross Chastain. They enter Ryan Blaney into the conversation. He's about to win at Talladega. And then in episode 4, even though you saw Larson in episode 3, they finally give him the spotlight in episodes 4 and 5, in addition to Christopher Bell. And there was a little bit of I don't think we kind of expected Bell to go this far. Kind of like how a lot of people had Ryan Blaney not going far in the playoffs, if you were listening to the media at the time. So, back to where I was, number 5, with Hendrick going 299 and 300. They had us go behind the veil at Hendrick a few times. In episode 2, you saw Hendrick with the countdown to 300 after Larson won Darlington, number 299. And then they had that little celebration, the Q&As, the adult beverage celebration to finally get that 300 win. But I love the camaraderie you get at Hendrick, and honestly, that's why Hendrick's one of the best teams in the business. Not one of, probably the best in the business. That's why they're the winningest team in NASCAR history. But because Rick Hendrick values his company, he values his people, and it is just so refreshing to see that in NASCAR, because there's just so many places where you don't see people valued, and that's why you have guys like Rick Hendrick and Roger Penske continuing to be successful year in and year out, because because they take the moments. Yeah, hey, we're great, this was awesome, and we're gonna move on, but still, let's take a moment to celebrate not just what we've done, but to celebrate the people who have helped us to get here. So I really loved that part about it. Again, that's number 5, Hendrick's countdown to 300 wins. Number 4, I have episode 1, Denny's internal conflict. I touched upon how they followed Denny a lot throughout the show with the driver and Denny, the owner. One of the biggest things was his action detrimental episode on the eve of the Daytona regular season cutoff, where he put it out in the open. I'm gonna help Bubba over Ty because I want to see both of my cars in the playoffs. And you saw that dichotomy play out a little bit. He and Joe, there was a point, they didn't get the audio, but they did have Joe Gibbs on camera. He and Denny talked it out. And if you also remember, they were in the midst of that contract negotiation around that time as well. They were still trying to get all that ironed out. They eventually did. But that was a very big focal point once Denny put that out in open air in the public, that I'm going to make sure my car gets into the playoffs. So that, I feel, was a very, very, very big point in the story. And eventually, of course, that kind of was an anticlimactic cliffhanger because, of course, Ty Gibbs got taken out in the big wreck 2/3 of the way, not 2/3 of the way, late in the Coke 400 itself, which kind of made the whole story null and void. So again, Denny's teammate versus team owner hat in episode 1, that was my number 4 moment of the show. Going up to number 3. I'm going to split this number 3, I'm going to split this up in 2 parts. Number 3 and number 2 are both going to be from the Talladega weekend. And number 3, I'm going to go into the behind-the-scenes meetings of both Ford and NBC. If you know me, I'm a huge nut for television production. I love seeing the behind-the-scenes stuff. So Dale Jr. taking the opportunity as executive producer of the show, decided to give the cameras access to some of the NBC production meetings during the Talladega weekend. Of course, NBC had both the Xfinity and Cup races, so we had a good opportunity to see kind of what goes into a NASCAR production from the NBC side of things, and I'm very grateful for that. I like seeing that little bit that I can't get to see, that you don't have a lot of access to. You also get to see a little bit of Junior in the booth as things happen when Ross Chastain had his big accident in the mid portion of the race at Talladega. They do have the camera in the booth, so you do get some shots of Junior critiquing Ross in the moment as it happens, and I love those hot on cue moments because you don't get that too often. Because you don't get that way too often in series like this. So I like that that Dale Jr. brought the cameras into the NBC production meetings. Yes, it was only for Talladega, but you still get that good little bit of, hey, this is how we operate. This is how we do. So, hey, come on. If we're going to give access to everything, we got to be included in that. I also like we got to look at Mark Rushbrook really hitting the nail home let's make sure we have a 4-driver in victory lane. Because Talladega, of course, is a super speedway race, it's so vital that you gotta have not just teammate help, but the manufacturer help. And of course, Ford was right there in the moment. You had both Ryan Blaney, Kevin Harvick dueling it out for the win in the final laps. Of course, William Byron came in there, and they had to make a nice little side pun to bring Aaron Blaney back into it because, of course, it's her boyfriend and her brother. I do feel Aaron got a little bit oversold. Sorry, Aaron, not judging you, just saying that was Netflix. But you have a very big dichotomy in that, and you see kind of how the importance of manufacturer support and involvement goes into super speedway racing. Do they try to dictate and kind of Shawshank the results? No, by no means do they. But at the same time, you still get that feel of, hey, yes, we're separate teams, but we're still one big conglomerate that represents Ford Motor Company. And Mark Rushbrook, very, very big to hit that home. Number 2, I'm gonna stick with Talladega. I'm gonna do a 2A and 2B with this one. The first 2B is gonna be the Watermelon Mobile. Ross Chastain, shows he is a very big guy. He is very big with the fans. He's probably the closest thing to what NASCAR fans would consider a throwback nowadays. Kind of back to how things used to be. Blue collar guy, not necessarily coming up just focusing on race cars, because Ross's story, if you don't know it, he grew up in his family's watermelon farming business down in Florida, but did racing on the side and eventually wanted to pursue it full time. And of course, watermelon farm, and he used the family to help him claw up the ladder until he finally got to Cup, and now he's got this big shot with Trackhouse. At Talladega, one of the biggest things that we saw was he had a fan that has this Watermelon Mobiles, this 57 Chevy Bel Air. Say that 5 times fast. But he has this cooped up Mobile. He's been going to Talladega for a few years now, and he has become a huge Ross Chastain fan. And Ross found his way out to the infield and managed to meet the fan, and the fan was just absolutely enamored that Ross would take time to come see him. But that also gets to Ross's personality and his popularity within the NASCAR realm. Ross is definitely a man of the fans, definitely a man of the people. By the way, I got to give Ross a huge shout out, because when I went to my first NASCAR race in Atlanta in 2022, Ross was the only signature I got in the pre-race that day. When he and Marcus Smith happened to walk and we crossed paths. I managed to get Marcus, but at the same time, Ross was right there. Asked Ross for his autograph, and he was very gracious about it. And I think he finished second that day, so behind Chase. So again, Ross, and I know from personally, Ross has always been a man of the fans, a man of the people, because that's just how he is. He doesn't feel like he's no superstar. He's very humble about how he goes about himself and his business, and he just wants his talking to happen on the track. So that was 2B. 2A, I have to give it to Tyler Reddick, and Bo as Mario and Luigi. They the fall festival, and just as meme worthy as Booty Barker was Tyler Reddick's Luigi. It's funny, but I love the concept of it. By the way, shout out to Bo. He actually won the costume contest at the fall festival they did at Talladega that weekend as Mario. And Tyler even goes as far as telling the story of how Bo got his name. It was a bet between him and his fiancée Alexa, where if Tyler won the Xfinity back in 2019 when Alexa was pregnant with Bo, if Tyler won the championship, Tyler got to name the son. If Tyler lost, Alexa got naming rights. So Tyler had to leave it out on the track, definitely, for sure. So safe to say Tyler won the championship, Tyler won the bet, and that's how Bo Reddick got his name. So love that story. Loved how that good little bit came into a good little bit of humor, but I definitely appreciate Tyler and Alexa's keeniness throughout the show. But with that being said, that does bring us to my number one moment of the show. I know Denny's been a very big focal point, probably was the most open of anybody in this series, and I don't mean to say it like this, but there's a reason I'm putting this at the top. But number one was Denny's reaction post Martinsville. I love this. This was my favorite moment of the series because you really saw what it means. We see too much of Denny Hamlin, the public speaker, the heel, the villain, and I really love that he allowed the cameras to continue rolling in that post-race moment where he's consoled by his two daughters, by his now fiancée Jordan Fish. His mom, I don't think his mom was at Martinsville, but his mom was in throughout the scenes. But to see his family know how much this pursuit means to him, I think it spoke volumes to how impactful this show can be. Steve Letarte they took the soundbite from Steve Letarte where these guys become superhuman. The helmets are like the cape. When they put them on, they feel like Superman. They feel like nothing can harm them. And we get that persona a lot. But in this moment, we finally got a second example. I won't say the first because we got Denny at the very beginning of the series showing him as in his daily, but I really felt like we got to see Denny Hamlin the human in this moment. Because it's just like, I'm pretty sure Denny could care less about the boos and the fans that don't care much for him. But to see what it means and to see how much his children, his daughters, and his family understand this pursuit, it really does say something about Denny. Where, you know what? I'm not going to say people. Do I think NASCAR fans will soften their take on Denny? By no means am I saying that in this case. But I will say that Denny really was able to show that, you know what, at the end of the day, I can say I'll move on, but in the moment it hurts. And honestly, we need to see those human moments from drivers from time to time. The ones that you get off pit road, the ones when they get to the motorhome, they get back and they're just like, It sucks. It sucks. And in the moment, I'm not going to be able to say, oh, I'm going to rebound and get back next year. I wanted to see that. That captivated me. And I think also seeing Molly and Taylor understand and be distraught, I think that also hit it home. So maybe because of the girls, I'm giving this a little bit of a sympathy vote, but no, in all seriousness, this really was a moment for me. Yes, you got to see all the other drivers get devastated, but because of Denny's stature, because of where Denny is in his career, he's no spring chicken, he's in his 40s. He knows he's not getting too many chances to finally hoist that cup. And I think this really, really went a long way in making sure we saw a real slice of Denny Hamlin. So that was number one for me. Denny's emotions after his elimination in Martinsville. Finally, my overall opinion. I think I've said it before, but I'll allude to it now. Excellent job by NASCAR Productions. Excellent job by Netflix. I think this is something the sport needs. I've been a stickler for NASCAR to find ways to promote these drivers outside of NASCAR windows. In NASCAR races, we see so much NASCAR-related commercials, NASCAR-related content. Why are we not showing these guys on commercials on Monday nights at 8 o'clock during The Voice, or Tuesday or Wednesday nights during Chicago Fire and Law and Order during the week? Why are they not why are we not putting them on non-NASCAR networks like CBS? Why are they not on ESPN? Granted, I know the relationship may not be the best, but hey, we got Amazon coming on board in 2025. We got TNT coming on board in 2025. We got streaming, plenty of opportunities where NASCAR can get their face out there. And I feel, based off the popularity, because this show has been in the top 10 on Netflix. The show came out on Tuesday, January 30th. By Thursday, it was in Netflix's top 5. It was in Netflix's top 5 most popular shows in the U.S. And as of me recording this, it's still in the top 10 shows in the U.S. And that says a lot. Let's get America to know these faces. I put in a previous episode how the New York Knicks disrespected Ryan Blaney by cropping him out of a photo with Bubba Wallace, something that at the time I honestly thought Blaney was kind of just sideswiping and being a little kidding about, but once I found out that he and Bubba were on the Today Show, I thought, oh, wait a minute, they really did crop him out. So, in light of that, I think that was this is something that's very desperately needed for the sport. We gotta find a way to get our drivers back into the mainstream. Not everyone's gonna be a Jeff Gordon. Not everyone's gonna be a Tony Stewart or a Dale Jr. where the mainstream and they're gonna be household names. Not all of them will be. I think one of them can be. And if NASCAR really and this is just a little bit of a side note, if NASCAR really wanted to, they could have plopped Chase Elliott in here, but Chase didn't factor into the playoffs, so you really couldn't do nothing about that. And I'm kind of glad they stayed away from Chase just to make it a little bit of a side effect. But I love that NASCAR is taking this major stride. Who knows? Hopefully, as successful as this is, we'll see a second season of this in 2024. And if they do, I hope they bring back different drivers. Because honestly, I don't want to see, because if the same ones are making the playoffs, okay, but still, get some of the ones that weren't in last year. NASCAR kind of did give themselves up a little bit. Like, they wanted to follow the ones who they felt had the best chances to go far. So that was 23. That was 23XI's duo. That was Denny. That was Kyle Larson, William Byron, and I get the logic behind it. But I do hope if they do bring this back next season, follow some different drivers. I'm not saying get the ones that you think won't be, but they didn't cover Brad Keselowski this year. They didn't cover Chris Buescher this year. They didn't have Kyle Busch in the series this year, and if they get back next year, I hope they go to them and be like, hey, can we come inside the veil? Because we need that. But as far as I'm concerned, this was a great first step for marketing NASCAR-wise to get them back into a little bit further mainstream so that the mainstream public can know who NASCAR drivers are. They may know a little bit about Bubba and Kyle Larson because of what they do and how effective they are, but let's face it, most people, if you say NASCAR, they're going to say Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Dale Earnhardt, or Tony Stewart. And they've been gone from the sport going on 7-8 years now. It's time NASCAR promotes this current generation of drivers. And I think this series is a great first step to going a long way. I hope we get some more commercials. I hope NASCAR puts these guys in a lot more different places. Because Jimmy Johnson's not going to be around for much longer, and sending him up on the Today Show is not gonna be even key and peele, with all due respect. So with that being said, that's gonna basically round out my recap of NASCAR Full Speed on Netflix. Thank you guys so much. If you come across this, thank you guys so much for watching. What did you think of the show? Leave a comment, like, subscribe. I still got pretty big plans for what I'm about to do. Just stay tuned in the coming weeks, for what I got coming out. But I definitely want to go ahead and get this out, especially with this still being a very hot topic in the NASCAR circle. So I definitely want to make sure I got a pretty big episode of this out. So with that being said, I'm David Lawrence. Thanks for coming inside the Scrutineering room with me, and we'll see you on the next video. Until then, keep a smile on your face, everybody. You're much better when you have one. So long, everyone. Bye-bye.